Hello and welcome to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar. In this video we'll be answering the question, when do you use a comma with as well as or such as? So these are phrases that we often use, but it's important we know whether we use a comma or not with them. So let's start with as well as. The only time you need commas around as well as is when you are introducing a non-restrictive clause, or as well as becomes part of a non-restrictive clause. When I say non-restrictive clause, all I mean is there's some additional, not essential information in the sentence. So, the sentence, spelling errors as well as grammar errors are worrying for an examiner to see. It's wrong for two reasons. I should have said spelling errors, comma, as well as grammar errors, comma, are worrying for an examiner to see. It's non-restrictive here because I've added additional information about the fact that it's not just spelling errors but also grammar errors. And actually that's not essential to the original meaning of this sentence, hence why I can use commas between it. And that's simply the rule. In all other instances when I'm introducing a restrictive clause, for example, so essential information, I will never need commas. Now let's move on to such as. The only time you'd use commas for such as is if you are introducing a non-restrictive clause. So again, some additional information that is not essential. So I've described it as follows. My error is this. Pale chocolate such as milk or white do not contain as much cocoa as you would expect. So when I say pale chocolate, I can elaborate by telling you more about that chocolate. I don't need to though, because I've said it's pale, so we should already imply that it's white or milk. So this is what it should look like if we're being correct. Pale chocolate, comma, such as milk or white, comma, do not contain as much cocoa as you would expect. All we've done here is introduced the specifics of what types of chocolates we mean when we say pale chocolate. That's not essential information for me to understand the sentence. And if I take out what's in the commas away from this sentence, it would still make sense. Now it's your turn. For each of the 5 sentences, identify if the sentence is grammatically accurate, using as well as or such as correctly. And if not, correct it. Hit pause if you need thinking time. So, how did you get on? Beach holidays, comma, such as Cornwall or Devon, comma, are not cheap. This is accurate on 2 levels. It's also true. When I've specified Cornwall or Devon, I put that between commas because I'm introducing a non-restrictive clause. I don't need that information to be referring to beach holidays. And the sentence would make sense without the commas if I took that information that's within the commas away. So this sentence does make grammatically accurate sense, and it's important the commas are positioned where they are for it to make the most clear sense. Please check for litter as well as lost items on the ground. This sounds like someone giving an instruction, and the reason why we do not need commas here is because this is a restrictive clause. We need each part of this sentence for it to make sense. Moving on to number 3, red meats, comma, such as lamb and beef, comma, are more expensive than others. This is also correct. I've specified what red meats I'm using in my example. By binding such as with commas, what I'm doing is giving the additional non-restrictive clause more leverage. I'm adding more detail to my sentence. And it's important that it's between commas so I know it's not necessary information for me to understand the main subject and even object of the sentence. Now, cakes, comma, such as lemon drizzle and Victoria sponge, comma, are common for afternoon tea. This is also correct. I've specified 2 types of cake that are found for afternoon tea, but I'm not elaborating more than that. The reason those types of cake are between commas is because they're additional information that I don't need and they're a non-restrictive clause. Finally, jumpers, as well as cardigans, are warm clothes in winter. So this is also correct because I'm giving you an additional example and it's between commas because I'm sharing another example, but if I took as well as cardigans away, the sentence would still make sense. Ultimately, it's important we know these rules so we can apply them, but it's also important we realise that non-restrictive clauses are just additional bits of information, and when we're using phrases such as and as well as, we are often just sharing additional information, so it makes sense that these would often be within commas for non-restrictive clauses. Why not subscribe to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar for all things English, literary and grammatical?